Hi, my name is Haley Hood, and this presentation is about social justice integration in kindergarten classrooms. Throughout this presentation, I'll define what it means to integrate subjects. I'll then talk about how to incorporate social justice into integrated units and why it's important for our youngest learners. I'll then talk through a design process that I use to create and plan for social justice integrated units. And then I'll provide an example of a social justice integrated unit I taught this last school year with my kindergarten students, and just some reflections and things to consider when doing this work. Throughout this presentation, I hope to show that this work is possible and necessary. Kindergarten students come ready to engage in social justice topics. They see real-world issues happening around them, and they are eager to come up with solutions. I also hope to show the importance of scaffolding the process for them. Although they do come ready to talk about social justice topics, it's important that we make the most successful environment for them by providing the language and the content scaffolding they need to really engage in this work and have deep and meaningful conversations. And lastly, I hope to show that integration is a tool to help streamline your planning. That talking about social justice in a kindergarten classroom or in any classroom doesn't have to be overwhelming for you as a teacher when you're planning, that by integrating it into the subjects you're already teaching, it will help you streamline the process. I'd like to acknowledge my grade level team at my school and my novice teacher from UCLA. The resources I'm sharing today in the unit was co-created with these people. So first we'll talk about what it means to integrate. When you integrate your teaching, you're connecting subjects to an overall theme, and this allows students to not only make connections between the different subject areas, but also to their own life and their lived experiences. And as a teacher, it allows you to create some really purposeful lessons that will help your students have a deeper understanding of that theme because they're talking about it, reading about it, learning about it throughout each subject. The purpose of integration is to engage young people with a theme throughout the entire day so they can gain that deeper understanding of whatever that theme might be. It also gives students multiple entry points into the learning. So for example, one student might access the content better in their reading and writing, whereas someone might access it better through art or science or math. It also allows you to address and connect the standards in a meaningful way. I like to incorporate social justice themes into my integrated units because, like I said, young people are ready to engage in this work, and it encourages them to think critically about the world around them and hopefully foster a trajectory of questioning systems of oppression throughout their educational journey. Ultimately, my goal is to inspire activism and help students develop a sense of agency as well. And I think integrating social justice into your units is one big way to inspire student activism. This is a design process that I use when creating integrated units. It's not the best way or the only way, but it's just one way that I go about creating this work. First thing, I like to consider these following things: your positionality, the ways in which your identity influences your instruction and the topics you choose. It's important to also reflect on the content creators as you're gathering resources and read alouds, thinking about whose voices you're highlighting in your teaching. Also the experiences of your student. What are they passionate about? What is relevant to them? What is going to be meaningful to them? And also thinking about the background knowledge. What previous relationships have you built with your students, experiences, conversations, and texts have led up to this point? After thinking about these things, and then choose an anchor standard. And it's important to choose something that's already in your year-long plan. So whatever standards you're already working on, just go ahead and make natural connections to social justice topics. In this example, I used the life science standard about making observations to describe patterns of what plants and animals need to survive. This life science standard was one that we had to teach at this point in the year, and it made us think about how understanding what animals need to survive can then lead to understanding the human impact on animals overall. So for this particular unit, we used sea turtles because our students had a really high interest in sea turtles and understanding them to then understand ocean pollution and climate change, and eventually being able to communicate solutions that will reduce the impact of humans on the land, water, and air, which was a kindergarten earth science standard. You can use any standard in any subject and see what natural connections can already be made. For example, when I taught fourth grade, I used a narrative writing standard to inspire a social justice unit on identities. After you choose that anchor standard to guide your unit and guide your work, then develop an essential question. When developing an essential question, it's important to think about creating a question that can't be answered right away and can't necessarily be answered even at the end of the unit. It should be open-ended so that students can continue revisiting it as they gain more and more knowledge on the topic. It should encourage further questions and connections to the theme, and just require critical thinking, fostering questioning, analysis, and reflection throughout the process. In this particular unit, my essential question was, how do humans impact the earth? I then come up with guiding questions throughout the unit, and this is where that scaffolding process really comes in. So at the end, I really want my students to be able to discuss and reflect on the human impact on Earth, but I know that they'll need to gain some knowledge along the way in order to do that. So the first week, my guiding question is, how do sea turtles survive in the ocean? And the concepts I'm teaching through that week are sea turtle behaviors, survival, and their environment. These are concepts I'm teaching throughout science, reading, writing, our shared reading throughout the day. We're learning about sea turtle behavior. Then the second week, we're learning about the impact that humans have on sea turtles. And the concepts I'm teaching this week are about Greta Thunberg and her call to action, plastic usage, and just plastic in the ocean. Once my students really have that buy-in after that first week and know all about sea turtles and feel really confident and experts on sea turtles, we then start to think about the human impact they have on them. And then the third week, my guiding question was, what actions can humans take to protect sea turtles? And the concepts I'm teaching throughout my subjects are reusing plastic, recycling, storm drains, and making a commitment to action. So you can see that these all build on each other to help students really develop that sense of activism and understanding about why ocean pollution and knowing about climate change is so important. And this is a template that you can use with any anchor standard and any essential question to help you think about the topics that your students will need to know along the way. Then I lesson plan, and I think about the lesson structures that already exist in my classroom. Sometimes social justice topics can feel overwhelming as a teacher, and some people use them as a separate time of their day, but I like to incorporate them into the structures I already have in place. This helps my students grasp the knowledge better because they're already familiar with Writer's Workshop, for example. They're already familiar with the routines of CGI story problems. We're now just incorporating that unit theme, that social justice theme, into those structures that already exist. So for example, in my classroom, we use science journals, and so my students are writing sea turtle survival entries that first week, talking about how their flippers help them survive, talking about how they hunt for food and how that supports their survival. In Writer's Workshop, at this point in the year, we were on an all about unit. So my students wrote all about sea turtle books using the knowledge they gained from reading, from science, from ELD throughout the unit. We do shared reading every single day, and there's a shared reading text throughout the whole week. And so for this particular week, I just wrote a text about sea turtles. Our interactive read aloud was all about sea turtles to help support the development of their writer's workshop and their science understanding. My students are already doing CGI story problems in math, so I continued doing subtraction word problems, except I started incorporating the hatchlings and the nesting process into our word problems because that was something that my students found really interesting. In ELD, my students are used to having constructive conversations, and we already have an ELD lesson structure in place. So during this unit, I included videos of sea turtles, informational videos, and we practiced our active listening skills and then had constructive conversations about those informative videos. And then in PE, social studies and phonics, we continued doing our regular instruction. This unit was not integrated into those. Integration doesn't have to be in every single subject. You can start with just 2 subjects, whatever connections can be made. But my goal is to show that I was able to easily incorporate this topic and this unit theme throughout these 6 subject areas. This is a lesson outline of week 2, just another way to show how it was incorporated throughout the week. Week 2, my shared reading text was on plastic. We're still working on the same skills of vocabulary, word attack, fluency, and punctuation, just with a text on plastic. In ELD, we're continuing the same active listening standards, but we're watching informational videos about plastic and then listening to Greta Thunberg's speech and news clips of Greta Thunberg, which connects to our interactive read aloud for that week, which was Our House is on Fire, written by Greta Thunberg. And then in Writer's Workshop, they're continuing to write their All About Sea Turtles book. Here are some examples from this particular unit. These are the shared reading texts for the first 2 weeks. You can see week 1, it's about sea turtles because the concepts I'm teaching are about sea turtle survival to go with that guiding question. And then week 2, the shared reading text is about plastic. And shared reading is not something you have to do in order to talk about social justice with kindergarten students. You can incorporate whatever theme into whatever structures and reading instruction you already have in place. In ELD, we listened to an informational video about sea turtles. We practiced our active listening skills. And then we addressed the standard about connecting ideas using conjunctions. So we had a model conversation where students listened for conjunctions and how we connected our ideas, and then got to practice the skill using the information in the video, which helped them with this ELD standard, but also helped them tackle the essential question for this unit and better understand the content they needed for their writing, for their science, and for their reading. Here's one example of a story problem we used in math. The same 3 reads protocol that we would use every single day was applied in the same way, just with a story that matched the essential question of the unit, and really the guiding question of that particular week as well. These are the read alouds I used for this unit. Some of them we focused on more than others. It was a combination of both fiction and nonfiction texts to really give students as much content as possible and to provide as many entry points as possible to different learners and different interests, all while supporting the guiding questions and essential question. And by the end of Writer's Workshop, students had created an all about book based on all of the knowledge they had gained about sea turtles throughout the unit. And then they also did some writing about reading, where they took key details from the informational text about Greta and reflected on it in a writing piece. These were all standards that we were already going to work on at this point in the year. And it was just natural to incorporate these topics with those standards. Lastly, I think it's important that there's some kind of culminating project for the unit. And I like to think about what this unit has inspired students to do. What actions has it inspired students to take? When doing a culminating project, I think it's important to provide space for individual actions and collective actions. So the individual actions are commitments that students make based on what they are passionate about and what resonated most with them throughout the unit. And this was really simple. For this unit, students just did a short writing piece and a drawing about a commitment they were going to make to themselves to reduce ocean pollution. And that could be something as simple as bringing a recyclable water bottle and reusing it each day. And then a collective action is something that the class decides on together that they want to do to create some kind of positive change based on the issues they learned about in the unit. And this could be something like, as a class, we decided to stop using the breakfast forks to reduce our plastic usage at school. To wrap up, here are just some reflections and reminders. It's okay to start small. Integrating social justice does not have to be a huge integrated unit with all your subjects at once. You can start with just 2 subjects at a time. Also, a reminder that this is just a tool to incorporate social justice topics into your existing structures and standards. It's not the best way to do it or the only way. It's just a way that I find to be successful for myself and for students to be able to understand these topics and engage in them in really meaningful ways. And lastly, I think it's important to just look at the bigger picture of what are your students' interests, what are their needs, and what connections can be made between their lived experiences, between school, the standards you're teaching, and any current events that might be impacting them. Thank you so much. Here's my email if you have any questions or would like to reach out. Thank you.